Welcome back, everybody. In this lesson, we are going to discuss what makes something a dependent versus an independent clause. And just to start this out, a dependent clause means that it cannot stand on its own. It depends on another clause in order to finish the thought. So, first and foremost, in order to have a complete sentence or independent clause, you must have both a subject and a verb. For example, he is a subject, ran is the verb, that is a complete sentence. Or the dog is our subject, yawned is our verb, that is a complete sentence, even though they're super short. Easy, right? Yes. I'm also going to give you two exceptions to the rule, which are pretty easy. One of those is commands, and the other one is exclamations. A command is somebody, commanding somebody else to do something. That's like if I look at my cat, I'm going to pick on him because he's right here, and I just say stop. The verb is given, right? That's the word stop, right? Like I'm telling him to stop, basically. And then the subject of the sentence is actually implied because I'm looking at the cat or the person and then giving the command. The subject is implied, so it's okay. Exclamations are also okay. Exclamations such as ouch or whatever curse word that you might use are fine because they express a complete idea, which is your reaction to that situation. So that's okay in English as well. If you're missing a subject or a verb, there's a good chance that it is not a complete sentence. That's the easiest way to identify incomplete sentences. For example, ate the leftovers. What's missing from there? The subject. There is no subject. If you say the dog ate the leftovers, cool, you have a complete sentence. Same for jumped the fence, you're missing your subject. Froze and sang, you're missing your subject. Dog, you're missing the verb. It sounds even more weird than when you're missing a subject. Okay, so that's the basics. We're going to get a little bit more complex here. Incomplete sentences can contain both a subject and a verb, and maybe even an object, and be really long and still be incomplete on their own. In those cases, if you have all of those things, but the thought can't stand alone, that's probably because it's a dependent clause. Dependent clauses depend on another thought in order to make sense. They start with some sort of a conjunction, and again, the thought isn't finished. That's the easiest way to think about this. Here are some of those conjunctions, and there are different kinds of conjunctions in here. We'll go into various levels of depth depending on which course you are about the different kinds of conjunctions, but we'll keep it simple for now. So here are some conjunctions. Because, though, although, despite, and, if, when, whether, before, after, unless, even if, as, since, there are a lot of them. If you start a sentence with one of those conjunctions and you don't finish the thought, then you've got a dependent clause that cannot stand alone. Here are some dependent clauses, and then I'll show you how to turn them into a complete sentence. The first one is, because he was thirsty. So first and foremost, ignore the word because. We have he was thirsty. Those three words are a complete sentence. We have our subject and we have our verb, right? It's a complete thought. When you add the conjunction of because to the start of it, it makes the thought incomplete. And to understand this, you kind of have to hear it on its own. Pretend like someone walks up and they want to tell you a story and they say, because he was thirsty. If they leave it at that, you probably have questions. What happened because he was thirsty? What did he do because he was thirsty? We're left with questions. You could complete the thought by adding an independent clause to this dependent clause. And before I read this example, I'll just specify again, an independent clause is a sentence that could stand on its own. That's all it really is. You can complete the thought by combining the two, and it would sound like this. He purchased a water bottle because he was thirsty. Awesome, that makes sense on its own, and we are good. Here's our second example. Even though she helped him. Again, ignore this conjunction right away. When we have she helped him, those three words can stand on their own as a complete sentence. However, when you add this conjunction to the start, it makes it a dependent clause. It makes it not able to stand alone. We can fix it by adding and I'm speaking too quickly, my apologies. We can fix it by adding an independent clause along with this dependent clause. And again, an independent clause is a complete sentence that could stand on its own. Here's what the fixed version would sound like. Even though she helped him, comma, he wasn't able to catch up. When those two thoughts are combined, everything makes sense. You are good to go. I do want to point out one little common misconception. When we're in elementary school, often we're told that you cannot start a sentence with because or similar conjunctions. That's not right. You can start a sentence with the word because as long as you combine that dependent clause with an independent clause. For example, this very first one, I could reverse the order of these clauses and be totally fine. And that's actually what I did for the second one so that I could show you this. I could say, because he was thirsty, comma, he purchased a water bottle, and you'd be good to go. Take a second to quiz yourself. Do you think each of these is complete or incomplete? In your notes, I would just write down 1 through 4 if I don't already have these in the notes, and then just write C or I next to them, and then test yourself. I'll give you the answers here in a little bit. Despite not knowing how to care for a puppy, he decided to adopt one. Without a current real ID and an updated passport. Because there was no gas in his car. Because they wanted candy, they walked to the store. Hopefully, you were able to pause and actually try to figure out if these are complete or incomplete sentences. I'll tell you right now before I show you the answers, 2 of them are complete and 2 of them are not. Here are your answers. Despite not knowing how to care for a puppy, comma, he decided to adopt one. This right here is a dependent clause because it starts with this conjunction, and because there's no subject, it cannot stand on its own. When this is combined with an independent clause, a sentence that could stand on its own, like he decided to adopt one, suddenly this sentence works. This sentence, without a current real ID and an updated passport, this is a dependent clause. It starts with a conjunction, and we're missing our subject and verb, so this can't stand on its own. This one right here, because there was no gas in the car, this is also a dependent clause. It starts with a conjunction. If you were to take away the conjunction, this could stand on its own. However, because the conjunction's there, it cannot, and it therefore needs part 2, which it's missing. Number 4, because they wanted candy, comma, they walked to the store. This is complete. We do have it starting with a dependent clause. However, that dependent clause is joined with an independent clause that could normally stand on its own, and the whole thought makes sense, so we are good to go. Review. See if you can fill these in. Please pause here and in your notes, try to fill in the blanks, and then I will give you the answers. Hopefully you were able to pause and try to fill in the blanks. Here are the answers. A sentence needs a subject and a verb to be complete. A sentence can have those and even an object, but still be incomplete because it starts with a conjunction. Those incomplete sentences are called dependent clauses. All right, hopefully that all made sense. If anything in there stumped you, please come talk to me or look at supplemental materials or talk to a classmate before you move forward, because it is going to get more complicated and we need to have these foundational things before we move forward.